Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Terry Rogers, and yesterday I was the Chief Behavior Analyst for the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and today I'm retired. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited for this phase, but you know what? More than anything, I'm excited for this conference and for you all to be participating with the team that we've put together over the years. I heard Dr. LeBlanc at a conference recently that I participated in my kitchen versus the conference that I participated in my office. And I think it was APBA, but I can't remember which one I did where. So sorry, it's much more memorable when you're going to a city and you can think about the city and remember the conference. But now it's like, where did I listen? Anyway, Dr. LeBlanc is really it's really special to have her here with us. The talk that I heard recently was so exciting and so impressive with the data and the system that she's put together. I really want us to be also inspired by it. She is a licensed psychologist. She's a BCBAD. She's the president of her company, LeBlanc Behavioral Consulting. She's been the professor in several colleges and universities, including Claremont McKenna College, Western Michigan University, and Auburn, and the executive director of Trumpet Behavioral Health. She's published 100 or more articles and books and chapters. She's been involved in treatment of autism, technology-based behavioral interventions, behavioral gerontology, systems of development in human services. She's been the associate editor of the Behavior Analysis in Practice. I mean, you could just keep going on and on. She won she was awarded the American Psychological Association Nathan Azrin Award for Distinguished Analysis. I mean, come on, this is a level of person that we are honored to have with us today, and I hope you all enjoy this presentation.
Thank you so much, Terry. And can you hear me well? Is my audio level good? I'm excited to be here. And by the way, Terry Rogers has long been one of my heroes. And so I was delighted when she reached out to me to say, yes, I'm glad to come talk to your group. And she may not know this, but I spent a good bit of time working with the Louisiana State Department of Disability Services and Mental Health, as well as the Texas Department of Disability Services and Mental Health. And so I very much understand the important and special role that this kind of an organization plays in the facilitation, oversight of quality for services for people throughout the state. And I'm delighted to be able to be connected to the Missouri team in some way. So what I'll be talking about today is strategies for creating clinical systems and evaluating clinical quality. And I'm going to make a distinction between things that we might do for clinical oversight and actual clinical systems, and give you some criteria by which you can actually evaluate, is what we have, does it really fully meet that definition of a system? So let's start, let's not skip our special code word, ovens. If you want a yummy, tasty CE and you need your special word, it is ovens. All right, so let's talk about the difference between building systems instead of doing tasks. There are lots of things that we do in the delivery of human services, in delivery of ABA services, all of those things, whether they are designing programming, doing outreach and care coordination, monitoring progress, all of those are things that we do. However, many different people could do those things, do them all somewhat differently, do them at different times. Some do them proactively, some do them only in response to crises. And doing tasks doesn't quite meet the definition of building systems. And so what I mean when I use the word system is, at its broadest level, a complex of interacting elements and their relationships. And we are going to talk about living systems, performance systems of people and organizations. But even your car's engine is a system, assuming you don't drive an electric car and you drive a gasoline powered vehicle. There are pistons, there's a carburetor, there are a variety of different components that have to do exactly the right thing at the right time in order for your car to run. Well, our state infrastructures and systems are the same way. There are all these different elements and there are relationships between each of them. And in fact, we can even map those relationships, the relationships sometimes being between people, who reports to who connects to who, and sometimes being processes, the things those people should do, and the timeline on which we want it to occur. Now, here's the thing. Once people enter the mix, things get way more exciting. So when we are dealing with living performance systems, it is a little different than your car's engine. You could turn your car off, not drive it for 2 or 3 weeks, and turn it back on, and it works exactly the same way. With people, over the span of even 2 to 3 weeks, you may have new people enter your system. As we see today with Terry, you may have some important people leave your system. The kinds of things that present themselves may be new and different. And so living performance systems require that additional level of care and facilitation to make sure that they are going to run effectively. So I mentioned that I would give you these kinds of questions or criteria such that you could determine whether you really have something that fully meets a system. And I'm going to talk about clinical systems. There are clearly lots of other systems, and I do think that you could at least take these ideas and apply them to anything, your payroll system, your HR system, whatever it might be. If you have a system, you should be able to answer these questions. You should know who is doing what at every level and part of the process. You should know when they're doing it and how they're doing it. And you should have a means to know how it is done well, or how well it is done. And you should have data that are feeding right back into the system as a way to revise and refine the system. So for example, you might know who is doing care coordination, exactly what constitutes care coordination, how often those things should be done, and how they should be done. You may have documentation for what was done, who it was done with, what the action items that came out of the contact with each person were. And you may have a quality assurance audit that's done periodically to make sure that the who was doing what, when, in the way that we want, completely, and with the appropriate documentation, follow-up, etc. So that would be the how do we know it's done well. But this other part's important too. Let's say we have what we think is a fantastic system and we've got our who's doing our what's, and they're doing it at the right wins, and they're doing it the right hows, and our data say it's being done well. but we're still not getting the outcome that we want for the people that we serve. Well, that's actually indicating that we need to revise and refine that system. We may need to change the what that's being done, the when it's being done, the how it's being done, any of those things. And so it's not just enough to know that the system that you have in place is being done well. That's actually something most people don't have. But even if you have that, that notion of like, well, if the system is running according to function, how do I know that it's functioning as well as it could? So we're going to talk about each of these components and use clinical systems as an example. The three kinds of clinical systems that I'm going to talk about are their clinical excellence systems. And of course, we all want to strive for better services. No matter how good they are, let's refine, view that level of excellence as your new baseline, and maybe we can just iterate that little percent more. The three that I'm going to talk about are supervision and performance management, peer review systems, and clinical quality assurance auditing. And these kinds of systems and the examples that I'm going to give you primarily have been developed in my efforts running adult day programs for seniors with cognitive impairments, systems to deliver parent training services and foster care systems, ABA services for individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities as part of my role of executive director of Trumpet Behavioral Health. So all of these kinds of things have fed into this. So let's talk a little bit about, we're going to talk not only about each of these systems, but we're going to talk about how they fit together and feed into each other. For example, your supervision and performance management systems for your practicing BCBAs, psychologists, OTs, whoever it might be, should actually feed into a peer review system. That means that the cases that need more support, aren't going as well as they could, they're just toughies, get more support. But the number and types of your cases feeding into your peer review system tell you maybe something about your supervision and performance management and can give you good ideas about how to revise it. So similarly, that peer review system might give you information that feeds into your quality assurance auditing, and your quality assurance auditing should then feed into and drive your supervision and performance management. What is it we're supervising to? High quality. How do we know we have this audit? These are the things that we look at. So let's begin by talking about supervision systems. And I recently published a book on supervision and mentoring that's available from Sloan Publishing if you're interested in it. It describes how I think about supervision. And my vision of supervision is heavily support focused. I was a professor for 15 years. I'm a teacher in my heart and my soul. And supervision is about helping people and supporting them to be better at their job and to be better for the people that they serve. And so providing that advice, guidance, expertise, to me, that's what supervision is. And it should be done positively. And so one of the most important things in any system is that when you ask a person, who's your supervisor, they should immediately know the person's name and they should probably even smile. That's the person who helps them. And when you're building a supervision system, if it's kind of like, oh, that's my boss, and I try to stay away from them because I see them when I get in trouble, then like right there, I can tell you there are hidden problems. And so the design of the system on the who and the what and the how with respect to supervision needs to be carefully arranged. So you got to know who does it, what do they do and how often, and what does that feed into? So this is, I mean, it's an org chart, right? This isn't magic. It's not like, oh, Linda LeBlanc, she's so smart. She came up with an org chart. But one of the things to keep in mind is that many people don't know their org chart. They might know who they report to, but they're not exactly sure where that goes. And some people can't answer the question of who's your supervisor, who's there to help you when you need help, who's the person who's going to help you climb the ladder if you want to, who's the person who's going to champion you at being awesome at exactly what you do, even if you don't want to climb the ladder, but you simply deserve recognition for your awesomeness. So let's say an ABA organization, this green box, this is where the position that there will be the most of. These are your therapists or technicians. They often have a registered behavior technician credential, and they are often doing the vast majority of program implementation, and they're hourly staff. They should be reporting to someone who has an appropriate credential and background to oversee their work. In an ABA organization, that would be a BCBA or a BCABA. In our organization, we had clinicians and associate clinicians. The associate clinicians were very new. They had just kind of bumped up. Clinicians had been there a little longer, and an associate clinician might report either to a clinician or senior clinician. They might work hand in hand with a clinician. But our senior clinicians actually did a lot of the supervisory management training responsibility oversight of the work that the BCBAs were doing. Now, this may surprise you. You might think like, well, a BCBA is an independent practice credential. Yes, it establishes minimum competence to practice. But when we work in this area of disability services, what we do is hard. And you often need that more experienced, wiser guide to not only help you recognize that you're going to be able to do hard things, but the ways that you can approach it when a family has limited resources and many stressors and their severe problem behavior. And this is maybe a level of intellectual and developmental disability that doesn't match the future that young parents had imagined. And you're thinking about, how do I interact with these people as they adjust to this? There's a whole lot, a whole lot. And having that additional level of oversight, guidance, supervision, management, that's important. And in many, so we also had people who provided kind of operational support, and then that might go up and up and up. So this is the who, but what do they do? The what in the systems that I've built is is two critical components, or are two critical components. The first is, if you know who your who is, what should they be doing? How should they be doing it? When should they be doing it? And so what I have found is that it will vary if it's left to vary, right? And What you want to do is bring positive and appropriate structure to what occurs in supervision. And again, supervision is complicated. There's a lot to talk about. And the chances that all of the important things will be noticed and talked about is small if there's not a structure to ensure that everybody is talking about the same important things. And so these two components are hand in glove in the kinds of systems that I built. So let's talk a little bit about agendas. I am a big fan of great meetings. And a lot of people say, oh, wait a minute, do we have those? Yes, we do, we can, but unfortunately, not all of them are great meetings. If you are looking for additional support, I do have an article called Planning and Conducting Effective Meetings that walks through some of this information, and I'm more than happy to share it to you. There are characteristics of a good meeting. And when you're in one of these, it feels refreshing, like a breath of fresh air. And in surveys, people absolutely agree on what makes a meeting seem like a good meeting. The use of an agenda, the keeping of minutes or notes in an informal way with some action items, punctuality, started on time, ended on time. Let's not keep everybody waiting. Having an appropriate meeting environment. It's not miserable hot, miserable cold, too cramped, etc. And having a meeting leader. So the leader is the person who takes the responsibility for making the meeting a good one. And they usually craft the agenda. They might take the notes or have someone else take the notes. They start the meeting on time. They wrap it up on time. They guide discussion and things in that meeting. And so creating an agenda that makes meetings effective is a great way to kind of think of it as that the rising tide raises all boats. You may have some fantastic supervisors out there, but let's get all the supervision up to a certain level. So this is the kind of, this is the approach I recommend for developing agendas, and then I'll show you a sample one for case consults. Any good agenda is not just some stuff we're going to do. It is the specific things, the tasks that we will do in enough detail that everybody in the meeting knows what that's going to be, and it's in a specific order. That is, I not only made the list, I went through the list to think about, well, which one should come first? If we talk about this first, it's going to lead us into this, it's going to lead us into that, and we can wrap up on that. And there's an estimated timing for each of them. Want to spend about 10 minutes on this, want to spend about 20 minutes on this, want to make sure I leave that time to wrap up, make my action items, and maybe set that next meeting if needed. And all of your estimated timings cannot exceed the total time. You know, it's funny when people don't really prep agendas, and if you've ever been in meetings that ran long, the likelihood is that there are no estimated timings on the agenda. If there were, you would see that the total estimated time actually exceeds the available time. So don't have meetings without agendas, and have your agenda have these components. And here's the thing, how do you get everybody having a similar agenda if your goal is to get everybody that same supervisory support? Start with a template and then explain to people how to tailor it for their needs. So your agenda will include the main categories of things that you want to happen in those supervision, case consult, support sessions, whatever it is you call them, and distribute the agenda 24 hours in advance. So this is a sample case consultation agenda that I made in conjunction with an organization, and it should have, so this is the kind of template that's available, and then it gets edited with the actual date and time and the actual names of the people in the meeting. I always think it's important to have a general check-in, at least 3 to 5 minutes. That includes your agenda, review, and adjustment, but it also includes what I call the three things. And those three things are about keeping the supervisory and management process human. So it's, tell me something exciting that happened this week for one of your clients, a success, an accomplishment. Tell me something that you just wondered about intellectually, whatever it is. I read this thing, I saw this thing, and then tell me something that was a little bit of a struggle or a barrier, and maybe I can help you with that, or we can work it into our agenda somewhere. But it's really about quickly and as protecting a little bit of time to keep it human. Then in this organization, they do a KPI spreadsheet review. So those are your key performance indicators, whatever it is, your utilization, your billables, assessment timelines, case accept, do we have any room to accept another case on the caseload, whatever it might be. Next is a stoplight review and prioritization of your cases and what they need. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but that is actually the majority of the meeting. The stoplight is predicated on color coding and prioritizing your cases, and we want to talk about all the ones that are red or yellow and our action plan for that. This is the support and guidance from the wiser, been doing it longer resource. And any new cases that are just, new to your case, just getting to know them. Then you can dig into detail. Maybe there's this one behavior program that's just not going as well as it is. Maybe there's one that's going fantastically, and we're going to take a few minutes to pat ourselves on the back about that, because this is hard stuff. If it is a trainee that you're supervising, you do some role plays. Maybe it's you've got to have a tough conversation coming up, maybe a little bit of contentious team meeting, and what are you going to say? How are you going to massage that experience? And then always 5 minutes for wrap up and action items. So you provide this agenda. It includes many of the every week, every month kinds of things. If something else comes up, a person can always add that to the agenda. But you know that everyone's starting from the same place. Now let's talk about, you heard me mention that the stoplight system was the bulk of the meeting. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I help organizations design this kind of a case triaging system. Now I use triaging basically it kind of comes from particularly the emergency medical care system, but it basically means a rapid assessment of status by category. And my preference is to use the term triaging as that assessment for all cases rather than the ones that are on fire, where it's like you just have to decide how much of the house you could prevent from burning down. So what that requires is that the person who is responsible for the case examines a set of critical variables that either impact or represent outcome. And everybody examines the same variables that we agree matter to the health of a case. And that is what guides our actions, our priorities, our time allocation, where we are seeking help. And so the stoplight part is a very familiar framework. You do not have to train people. Anyone who's ever driven or ridden in a car with someone who's driven knows green is all good, proceed. Whereas yellow is caution, you need to be careful. Looks like Terry's saying you have a 2-tier assessment. Which is great as long as everybody knows how to use it and they agree on it. Red, stop, pause, help, do not proceed. Let's get some help. And so this is just, it's capitalizing on what people already know to look at these variables. And so for each of these variables, for each of your clients, you want to quickly know what data you should look at in order to determine whether your acquisition data are in good shape. Is that green, yellow, or red? What about current status of problem behavior? Green, yellow, red. For different organizations, we choose different variables, but virtually everyone has progress in acquisition and problem behavior on there. But you could have family involvement, family satisfaction with services. You could have the team skills. Is it a new team? Is it an experienced team? You might have things like, if you're working within conjunction of a school system, appropriateness of the placement, functioning of the IEP team, whatever is important to the type of services that you design. And then you give everyone the same instructions. In this case, within that supervisory structure that I showed you, every BCBA would have all of their clients. Every senior clinician would have a spreadsheet that they've gotten from their people that has every BCBA and every one of their clients, so that they can also look at the overall pattern of cases per BCBA, whereas any BCBA is only going to know their own cases. But you have them color code each thing, and you provide some anchors. Some people provide very detailed anchors. Some people prefer more anchors that are a little bit more like your gut. Like this is, okay, it's family involvement and satisfaction. And maybe we only sample that once a year, but in the intervening time, guess what? Does your gut tell you, heck yeah, we're loving each other? Or, doing okay. Well, let's keep an eye on it. Or like, not so great. And it could be that that is detailed enough for that particular variable. Now, if you have data, for example, some organizations know what percentage of parent training and parent meetings are actually occurring versus being canceled, and they use that as data to inform this color coding. So it ends up looking something like this. Here's your clinical coordinator. Each of these is a client and the initials are filled in. And then they have filled in every variable as green, yellow, or red. In the yellow and red, you typically have them type in notes so that they could send you this PowerPoint and the supervisor of that BCBA would have this information. So you can see for certain cases, like this top case is green across the board. Ta-da, let's take a moment to celebrate. The others have a little bit of sore spots, and that's not unreasonable. So this isn't the kind of thing where you're trying to manage people to have all cases that are going fantastically. Because guess what? Not all cases go fantastically all the time. Instead, your goal is to get people good at noticing and responding to emerging problems. So over time, what you'll start to notice, people start off like you really help them notice those problems. They may think everything's a yellow or red. And so you have to kind of think like, well, I think probably that one really is a green. Nothing's perfect, but I think that's green. And then over time, they're working on those reds, turning them into yellows, and perhaps they end up with relatively few reds because they're detecting them when they're a yellow. Now you also have them color code the overall case. And this is not a, Excel formula of the number of reds divided by all cells or whatever. We all know sometimes these things are not equally weighted and they affect each other. The point is to get the person looking at all of these important variables and to get everybody looking at the same variables and color coding the overall case and then developing an action list associated with that. So here's your second code word. If you're needing that, it's import. So if your supervision and performance management is kind of focused on supporting people, being okay, talking about problems, working on those problems together, you can see that that might lead into your peer review system. So let's say you've got a case that has been read and we developed an action plan and we executed on the action plan and we got it to yellow, and then a month later it was red again, and then it was red again, and we're doing our best, and this is a toughie. You set criteria for how your cases move to peer review. Could be a certain number of months, could be whatever it might be. That peer review system then gives you the opportunity for focused support. And sometimes you need either internal supports. There's a super smarty pants right within your system. Sometimes you need an outside perspective, but regardless of who is in the peer review, it is that fresh perspective, collaborative problem solving, and additional expertise. So again, in my framework, peer review is most productive when it is viewed as a desirable support when you need it, rather than where you have to go when you're in trouble. Because this should be our resource to help with the tough ones. So you can do internal, you can do external, you can do a combination of them, but it's really designed to facilitate accountability and improved skills. So the cases should get better, and the clinician, the BCBA, the speech OT, whoever it is that's coming to the peer review should be learning something and feeling supported. And it should result in the red cases maybe becoming yellow or even green, or even identification that we actually need a different level of care, whatever might be a more appropriate decision. So this is a graphic that illustrates a peer review system. So it tells you who goes into peer review, what happens, how often it happens, who's doing that, and then how do we know when we're done? So you have set criteria, your case review occurs, and all the things in this box happen. The case review leads to a period of implementing feedback, analyzing that feedback, because I love some data, and then you're back in case review on a specified timeline. And that timeline, again, you can give like, here's a default, but if there were a number of items that take a little longer to do, you extend it out a bit. And that cycle continues until the client no longer meets the criteria for peer review. So with this kind of a defined system, you can look at the number and percentage of clients coming to peer review. You can look at the characteristics of those clients, which may tell you where you need a little bit more training proactively for your people. All of these kinds of things, like, it can drive not only your clinical excellence systems, but your training, continuing education, maybe even HR, if you're seeing that the cases that are coming to peer review are ones that have a good bit of turnover, or, like newer RBTs are consistently resulting in cases kind of not making this progress. Okay, so now we have the piece of the pie at the bottom, and that is the audit, the quality assurance. And, audit's got a bad reputation, but when you've got a good audit that also tells people that they're doing a great job, you're in great shape. So I try to be a champion of meetings and audits as long as they're awesome, as long as they're done well. And in fact, they're designed, quality assurance audits are designed to give you the how well was it done portion of it. So let's talk a little bit about clinical quality, and I want to talk about both process and outcomes. My preference is for a robust internal clinical quality audit. There are definitely organizations that kind of like view, like audit preparation is what you do before CARF comes in, or before, BICO, or, whatever it is. In higher education, it was SAC, these accrediting bodies or what have you, that, that's who does the auditing. But I prefer that you do have a system for robust internal audits based on the stated expectations and the resource supports. So if we made it clear you're supposed to do that these are our recommended practices, then you can expect that this often there's going to be an audit, and we can also give you the tools for self-audit. So for me, the best audit is one where you've been checking yourself all along and you know exactly what your scores are going to be, give or take a percentage. And your self-auditing is what's going to have that most immediate impact on your services. And it should include both process and outcome variables. So I want to make a distinction between process and outcome. Process being the things you do and the way you do them, and that's what you manage. In business and industry, a whole lot of people want to manage outcomes. Outcomes are important, but there are multiple ways to get outcomes, and a lot of them aren't good. So the process, the things you do and the way you do them, that's what you manage. And then the outcomes are the effects you want to achieve and the extent to which you achieve them. Now, I mention this because I'm going to show you some data in a bit from a foster care system. And, the best outcome, the desired outcome, is a happy, intact, healthy family. And the child's able to remain with their family. And you can achieve that outcome by ignoring a lot of indicators of abuse and neglect and on and on and on. So it's not just about don't manage the outcomes, achieve the outcomes by managing the process. So this is a sample quality assurance audit. And, this is not, again, rocket science. It's quality indicators about the process. Are the problem behaviors being targeted for reduction, prioritized appropriately based on the impact for the consumer and caregivers? I don't want to hear about us talking about vocal stereotypy when a child has pica. That is not addressed. So it's really about that right priority, the right behavioral assessment process, etc. And you have to build the tools that go along with what you're auditing people's use of. So we know the who that should be doing what and the when they should be doing it. And this becomes the how well was it done according to that plan. Now, this is a similar quality audit on skill acquisition. Are there the right number of individualized quality programs currently open and active? And of course, you can create a table. If it's this many hours, child is this old, this is our goal, you should be in this range. Do they target several domains, age appropriate, All of these are things that you would probably look at and say, oh yeah, yep, definitely got to pay attention to that. Better know what your reinforcers are, etc. So you can see, you can go through everything, score it, and get an overall score, an overall process score. But there's also outcomes. Do you have at least 80% of active programs with multiple targets mastered? Are you seeing decreasing number of trials to learning, etc.? So those kind of clinical quality assurance scores can actually be incorporated into the stoplight review. So where it was problem behavior progress, skill acquisition progress, you could also put in your quality assurance scores for those things. And in terms of performance management, you could incorporate it into a weighted performance scorecard if you wanted. But one of the things that I want to point out to you is that when you're looking at outcomes in this kind of a quality assurance process, mostly what you're looking at are proximal rather than distal outcomes. So let me talk a little bit about what I mean by that. A proximal outcome is a close-in outcome. It's an immediate outcome directly resulting from your intervention. And to be honest with you, I would argue that these are almost part of your process. If you've got a behavior plan and you are monitoring your data and you have not yet achieved at least an 80% reduction, you should still be changing your behavior plan. So that is that outcome, immediate outcome drives, keep going in the process, not there yet. That's like a microscope right here. But there's also distal, the telescope. Those are those long-term distributed outcomes resulting from not only your intervention, but the effects produced by the intervention over time. If we got that problem behavior down, is this family now going out into the community? Gracious sakes, can they take a vacation? You know, are they having that life? That's why we're all in it. And you might get that 80% reduction and the distal stuff's not there. So when you think about proximal outcomes, you do need those. You absolutely do. That's going to be your percent reduction in problem behavior, your percentage of new skills acquired. Maybe it's your percent accuracy in family capabilities, percentage of families satisfied with services. Those are all great. But the distal outcomes are more about the bigger life, the happier, healthier, intact, functional, confident family, independent adult, and elimination or delay of those negative outcomes like a loss of placement, hospitalization, medication, you know, maybe you even get to remove some of those meds. So I do want to talk you through a little bit of data here, and I'll try to be quick about this. I want to leave a few minutes for questions, but special thanks to Terry Rogers because she created a program in Florida with their Department of Children's Services for doing parent training in their foster care system. And the state of Alabama adopted a version of that training in collaboration with Terry. And these are some outcomes that we examined. So while I was on the faculty at Auburn University with Dr. James Carr, we actually worked with the state in multiple counties to coordinate. We delivered their behavioral parent training. And when and the program we felt was very successful. And when state funding got a little tight, our partners at the state said we need to be able to show what impact this is having. So we looked at the outcomes. Now we did parent training with yes, tools of choice. That's exactly right. So we looked at the outcomes. I'm going to show you data with biological families. We also did training with any family that became a foster family. But what we did was we actually looked at, well, you can see 171 families in our experimental group who went through our entire parent training process. We also had a control group, and that control group was matched by the month of entry into the system, the county to account for family judges who make different family court judges who make different kinds of decisions, and I think age of the child. So a variety of different things. We got that data from the archive. And what we looked at was the placement outcome. So again, with these biological families, your desired outcome, the reason we build the system is so that families can be reunified or that children can remain at their home. Those are that they never were removed. We kind of caught a problem, get that training going, never need to remove. And so those are the two leftmost categories, whereas the outcomes of the child had already been removed and was not placed and is still not at home is the not at home category. And the removed is you started off in the home and actually had to be removed. And so what you can look at is the distribution of these families. And what we want is a more left skewed distribution for our experimental group, which would suggest that the parent training program was producing those better effects. And in fact, what you can see is there is a big leftward distribution with significantly more of families particularly being reunified or remaining at home, as opposed to without the treatment, without this parent training program, you were twice as likely for the child to have been removed and never go back to their biological family. So that was at 2 years outcome. That is that more distal outcome. We get that from pre-post measures of life restriction or expansion, access, family capacity, quality of life, stress, those kinds of things, they matter tremendously. Things like medication dosage reductions, cost savings, these kinds of outcomes, they benefit our overall, certainly the clients and our systems in a variety of different ways. And you probably have some others that you measure. So let's get our third code word in here, spotty. But in summary, think about, is what we're doing, does it kind of meet that criteria for a system? Do we know who does what, when, and how? Do we know how well it's being done? And does that then inform revision of our system? And, you know, we want to strive for those big long-term effects and measure both those proximal outcomes, but also the distal ones in order to determine how you revise those clinical excellence systems. So this is my email, and I'll leave it up for just a minute, and I'm happy to answer a few questions. I know we have just a few minutes remaining, and then I'll hop off. And so, yeah, let me open it up. Have we gotten any questions?
There have the only question that's come through is about requesting the PowerPoint. We said that we were recording this session. So I'm checking the chat box now. Outstanding. That would be great. We'll post that on the website.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm happy to do so. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Okie doke. Well, so
Linda, I have a question, just to get it started. Have you used this kind of system in work or programs that are not just ABA programs? So like you're talking about behavioral supervision, but what about in a day program or a, you know, some other kind of program?
Yeah, so I had not yet developed that kind of a stoplight system when I used to run an adult day services program that served people who had had lifelong intellectual disabilities but were in late life, and as well as those who had newly acquired dementia and what have you. And we did not have exactly this kind of a system, but we had a system where I kind of just, at that point I was just doing like, you have to know why you want to talk about that case. And when someone said, I want to talk about this case, I'm like, give me a couple reasons why. And then tell me another case you're not going to talk about and why. So I was basically just in a more teaching setting and kind of working out those general questions for the basically getting at, do you know why you're prioritizing certain things over others? I do think that it could work. And I think that the variables that you would look at would be a little bit different. If it were an adult day services program for adults with intellectual disabilities, there would be a few things that I would look at. And some of them would actually be about the environment. For example, the level of engagement, if you do that kind of momentary sweep, who's doing something, who's smiling, who's talking, who's interacting, that kind of thing. And then it would also probably focus on, are we getting the documentation and data collection, as well as, yes, those positive and negative interactions. So it's really about, as a group, let's agree on the variables that everybody should be responding to. And then let's teach everybody to be able to quickly respond to those. And it won't be perfect, but it'll be so much better than people responding to just whatever pops up, that you're going to really be able to start seeing kind of that pattern emerge of whatever it is. And sometimes what you can do is you kind of solve a problem, right? Like maybe we weren't getting enough engagement and we really focused on that. And those are the things we bring forward. Then our engagement goes up. Great, we're not worried about that. But, there was always a number 2 on the list. And sometimes number 2 or 3 on the list is also big stuff. And so it kind of allows you to shift what your focus and emphasis can be over time. Okay, well, I know my time is up and you guys have a lot of exciting things ahead of you in the conference. I just want to say thank you one more time for having me out to speak about something that I care a lot about, and thank you for all the good work that you're doing in Missouri. I actually lived in Missouri for a little while with my sister, between Columbia and Jefferson City, in a little bitty old town called Jamestown. And so it's close to my heart, and the work you do is important. And I appreciate any help I've been able to give.
Linda, this has been so awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you, Teresa. Bye-bye, Terry, and happy retirement.
Before we sign off, I'd love to show folks a few things on our website so that you're able to participate in the next steps